Welcome back to the Convergence Conversations podcast. We're excited to have another conversation and just talk. Justin is here along with myself. My name's Andrew. We're glad to be hanging out with you. And we're going to talk about what is the importance of gathering together.
This is something that, we both are pretty passionate about, considering we work in local church ministry. So obviously we believe in the importance of the local gathering, or we wouldn't be doing what we were doing. However, I have met some people, I won't say where they worked, but I have met some people who work at churches who don't believe in organized religion. And that is one of the wildest things that I've ever encountered. Have you ever seen anybody like that?
I have not.
No, I
would be kind of like, is that the place you're supposed to be working?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was like they just said it nonchalantly. They're like, oh yeah, I work here, but I don't know why I work here. I don't even believe in organized religion.
But I think it's like when you say organized religion, what are you saying?
One of the people that's like, I have my own personal time with Jesus, and that's all I ever need to do. I don't need to go anywhere. I don't need to say anything. I don't need to, gather, whether it be once a week or ever in groups. I just sit alone with Jesus, and that's the totality of the Christian walk.
Yeah, which I think is a good stemming point that we can kind of go off of is, what would you say to that? What would be one of your first points back to that in terms of, obviously there's a wrestle between, hey, is it beneficial, A, and B, is this part of walking with Jesus? Is this part of walking out the Christian life? What would you say to that?
Man, there's what I said because I was a young man in the Lord, and I was just like, oh, cool. And then there's what I would say now. If somebody in our church, maybe somebody came and they wanted to, meet or get coffee or something, they're like, I don't believe that we need to go to church. Like, I'm a Christian, I love Jesus, but I don't believe we need to go to church. I probably wouldn't come at it directly from a theological standpoint and be like, well, this is why the Bible says we need to go to church. I'd probably start asking questions. Like, I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. And I'd try to get the conversation to ask questions like, well, how are you doing right now? How is your mental health? Are you struggling in any certain areas? How's your marriage? How's your relationship with your family? And ask these questions because those all tie back to why we were commanded in the New Testament to not forsake the gathering together. It wasn't necessarily some super spiritual experience that happens with God only when we're in the four walls of the church. In fact, I would probably, we haven't talked about this, but I would probably say that happens less often than we would like to believe. That the same God and the same God experiences that we experience at church a lot of times are accessible to us anywhere at any time. Because
God is accessible to us at all
times.
Quite
literally.
Right?
Where the line is on that, I don't know. How he pours himself out specifically in corporate gatherings versus private. Like, I don't really have an opinion on that. But I would be asking them, hey, how's your life going? Right? And can we highlight any areas that would really benefit from you being a part of this community, or any community for that matter? Because that was like, every time you see gathering in the local church come up in the New Testament, it's always accompanied with some reason having to do with edification, encouragement, teaching and admonishing one another, growing together. I haven't yet seen it come up where it's like, do this to get more of God or to be a better Christian. It's all about to grow yourself and to be supported, to support one another and to be supported by other people. So if I ask that person, how's your marriage? And they're like, oh man, struggling. Like, it's been really rough. And be like, how's your relationships with your family? Rough. How are you doing at work? Oh, I hate my job. It's terrible. I'm depressed. It's like, oh wow. Well, you'd probably really benefit from spiritual community to be able to hold you up in this season and help bear your burdens, which is what the church is made for. You know what I mean? That would be my response, just right out the gate, is like, most of the things that person might complain about, not having, like support, is exactly what is provided by a healthy local church, is that support.
Yeah, I think just hearing their thoughts about it, I think meeting people where they're at, hey, this is where you're at. this is your wrestle, that's great that you're wrestling with it. Now let's just like talk through that and ask questions and just kind of get a feel for what does community mean? Because again, part of the challenge that we have too is there's different definitions and things that people create around things. And so just trying to even get a feel for what they're looking at. But yeah, I think at a very base level, kind of what we've done is we've sort of started in a different conversation that will end up with the corporate gathering. But I think we've sort of started in just a need for why is community important? And obviously at a baseline level, Genesis.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going back to Genesis 2, right? And we're going back to Genesis 3, and we're going back to, looking at God created male and female in the image of God. He created them. God created Adam, and it's the only thing he said wasn't good was that man should be alone. Mm-hmm. Right? And so right from the beginning, we have God establishing, he sees Adam cultivating the earth, and he's like, oh, something's not good. Mm-hmm. Well, what was it? It was that Adam was alone, and obviously he had God.
Yeah.
So there's an aspect of actually being with other humans, being with other people that establishes a communal aspect of walking the earth and relationship and communion and all of those different things that's needed. And I think obviously that's why, again, that's when we have Genesis 2:24, we have the covenant of marriage. We have for the man should leave his father and be joined to his wife together, right? There's the covenant of marriage, but then also all throughout scripture, we have community. We find, I love, Jesus picks the 12. We've got the disciples consistently in the book of Acts going off in at least twos. You got Paul and Barnabas. You have this. Paul often mentions, this person says hi, this other person says hi. Yeah. There's an aspect of just even reading the Bible. You read it knowing that this is happening in a community. Mm-hmm. There's a community that's present. Like the church was birthed, and there were community, there were people that were gathering together and looking at that. And so just the value of being with other people, like what I need, I don't just have. Mm-hmm. The Lord does a lot and the Lord gives me a lot, but there's a reality of being with other people that brings strength. It brings wisdom. It brings health, it brings accountability, it brings all of these things that I need, and I don't get those things if I choose to remain isolated and just try to navigate things on my own.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and how many times have we faced a certain problem or something in our lives where we just felt so stuck? And then when you finally decide, you know what, I'm going to bring this to someone, I'm going to get someone else's opinion on this, they're just like, oh, do X, Y, Z. Yeah, you were turning it right, just turn left or whatever. I mean, like an outside opinion is something we value. What do they say in the medical community? You got to get a second opinion, That was random. That doesn't mean anything. There's no metaphor there. But yeah, it's like in community is where we were designed to live, because you're right. Man was not meant to be alone, to live alone. The garden probably would have looked a lot different. Like the garden probably had it was a bachelor pad. It was just God and Adam. Adam was stewarding it to the best of his ability, but he probably didn't have any curtains. He maybe had like 2 chairs. I don't know where you're going to get curtains anyway. He had paper plates, like he didn't have any real silverware. He needed a woman's touch. He needed that.
He needed to not be alone.
You're not laughing, and I'm uncomfortable that you're not laughing. Okay.
Did that joke land? No. No, man was not meant to be alone. Yeah, I think it's the isolation thing. I think some questions that I would ask when I sit down, oftentimes when you sit down with people and maybe there's a wrestle, there's something that they're dealing with. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, I'm not saying all the time, but a lot of times I've noticed that when let's just take addiction, for example, if it's pornography, if it's there's so many other things, right? Sometimes one of the triggers that I've found most common is loneliness. Actually, it's that you're alone. You're isolated. You're by yourself. A lot of people even struggle. There can be a greater struggle sometimes at night when there's not, and there's just this struggle. And so to me, that's a clear sign that, hey, we need people around us. We don't just need to be by ourselves. We actually need the strength and the ability to have people around us to not remain isolated, to not, we're not supposed to live or fight battles alone. I think there's people that they're trying to overcome something, and actually they don't need to try to overcome it by themselves. They actually need to join with, whether that's a beautiful church family, which it should be, or that's another friend, it's a spouse, it's a family member. Hey, let's fight this together.
Yeah.
Let's go through this together. And that together aspect is so critical, because that is the way that we were designed. We were designed to need relationship.
Yep.
From the very beginning, we were designed to need that. And this is just a huge component, not just of obviously walking out the Christian life, but just doing things in a healthy manner. Yeah, I just think walking with people. I mean, I remember, when I got a prophetic word, that I wouldn't necessarily say you should be prophesying these prophetic words, but I got a prophetic word about marriage. I remember it to this day. It was January or February of 2023. And I get this word, and I'm like,
2023?
2013.
There we go.
2013, yeah. Not 2023,
wow,
2013.
We're showing our age.
Gosh, dude.
Oh, that was only 10 years prior.
It was forever ago. 2013, and in that prophetic word, it was about, Andrew's not going to be a bachelor for long. And I'm like, what in the world do I do with that prophetic word? And obviously, we do typically tell people don't prophesy dates and mates, and it's probably not something you need to just be prophesying. But in this case, it was a tested prophet who I really respected and really their words meant something. And in this case,
and knew your family.
This is the word, and I'm like, what do I do with that word? And of course, I brought it to the Lord, but then I also brought it to my best friend at the time, who I was living with. And I remember we had a conversation in our kitchen, and I was just like, what in the world do I do with this? What would you do with that? And I just remember he was like, here's what I think you should do. I think you should go open up an engagement ring account. And I tell this story often here sometimes in sermons. And I went to, at the time, Bank of America, and just literally told the guy, I want to open up an engagement ring account, not a checking account, not a savings account. I felt like the Lord was like, you need to be so specific. And it feels awkward when you're in there. And
this guy was like, good luck.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's technically it's going to end up being a savings or a checking account. But the Lord was like, you need to be specific in what you're asking for. So I do. I'm like, I want to open an engagement ring account. And that ended up being where he was like, well, I think what you should do is you should just have a regular withdrawal from your checking account, so that it goes in here and it's actually happening even beyond you having to think about it. It's just coming in. And I did that, and I know it's one of those things where I know I'm basically 100% confident that I would have never thought of that on my own. And I'm not saying that is the reason that I got married when I did. The Lord has ways of doing things, but I do think that advice and stepping into that advice did open a door for me to begin to intercede and begin to step into being prepared for marriage in a way that I don't think I would have done otherwise.
Yeah.
Had I not had that conversation with a friend.
Yeah.
And just brought that person into the fold on, hey, this is what's going on. What would you do with that? And processing that word with somebody really helped me in that moment.
Yeah. Well, and I want to come at it from another angle too, because you talk about, you had all this community, right, to turn to. And a lot of your community, because I know you, is even within your own family, like your own father, and then even before that, your own grandfather. All amazing men of God. You had a lot of amazing men of God in your life to turn to in this community that weren't all necessarily just members of your church. And I think a lot of people have that in their life too, and so they don't feel this like lack of community because somebody's like, oh, well, I have a really great friend group, and they all love the Lord even. Or maybe they don't, or maybe they do. Maybe they all love the Lord. I have a great friend group. We've got a big family of wonderful parents. And maybe it's a married couple and it's the same thing over there. So they've got all kinds of built-in community and support. Maybe that's not what they need from the church, but maybe that's what the church needs from them. Maybe that is an area for them to be able to pour out, where now they can support people. Because it's not just all about I come to get, but it's also I come to give and pour out. And so those very same people who have that... It's a two-way
street, right? Relationship's a two-way street.
Yeah, they know what support and encouragement and all that looks like because it's been demonstrated well. How now can they pour that out for someone else who maybe didn't have that built into their family, don't have that currently, don't have that system? Well, now they can come into a body like a church and have an easy avenue to pour that out. Yeah. Whether it's through small groups or men's and women's ministry or youth or whatever, now you're pouring out what the Lord's done in your life. And it really is the beauty of our community, is it's not the beginners club and it's not the elite club. It's just the club of Jesus Christ. And there's beginners and there's elite members, who've been a member. And I say membership. I'm trying to make a gym joke. It's like you've been a membership. You've had a membership for more than 10 years, and you become a gold star member.
It's the generations. It's life with Jesus.
There's silver star member.
There's the wisdom.
That's the color of their hair.
There's wisdom, zeal. There's older generations, younger generations. It's all of us together, and that's the beauty of discipleship. I glean, I give. I glean, I give, and that aspect of life within the context of what life in a spiritual community and church and local church and just being with people looks like is that aspect of, you're being discipled and you're discipling. Yeah. And I think that the beauty in the generations together is just really, really, just that is how it's meant to be. Yeah. Is we're all together in this.
Well, and, I can speak directly from someone who's been in worship ministry for most of my time in the body of Christ. I've been in worship ministry, and I've been a worship leader / pastor, depending on the season and what that church called it, whatever their title was, for, probably over 10 years. I don't know when I started. Who knows? But the point I'm trying to make is that it's really easy for people like that to be, I think a good way to say it would probably be like in the church, but not of the church. It's like they're there, but they're not really there. It's that idea of, okay, I'm coming in, I have practiced before, sound check before, and then we do the worship service, and then I'm in the green room, or in our case, the prayer room, and grab a bottle of water, and maybe sit at the back, and maybe slide out right before the end, because I've been there all day, I'm tired, and you create this culture of people who their faces are really known, but then there's this aspect of isolation. Because yes, you're known by the worship team, but are you known? Are you truly known? Do you have relationship in the rest of the body at large? And we're not ever going to have relationship with every person in the church, but it gets to be very isolationist. And then you don't have that support and you don't have that encouragement. And I bring this up because I, in my own life, have experienced this. I've told you this many times, and I share this all the time. Worship ministry is hard. And there was a lot of days when I'll get up, still sometimes I'll get down off the stage and be like, oh, that was rough. That didn't go anything like I hoped it could have gone, like it's gone before, and either I didn't do a good job or it just didn't feel, it was hard, it was taxing, or maybe it was fine, but I just don't feel that great about it. There is someone I seek out who also seeks me out, and his name is Walt Dill. And anybody at our church who knows Walt Dill knows what I'm talking about, and I'm calling him out right now. If you need encouragement, just go stand close to Walt Dill.
And Kelly Diane.
And Kelly Diane.
Yes.
But if you just stand within arm's length of Walt Dill for a long enough amount of time, you give it a couple minutes, he will notice you, he will snatch you up, and he will encourage you. And I knew that would happen. And so it was happening naturally where he would come find me and encourage me and be like, that was so anointed. This is what happened to me during the worship time. Such a great job. So appreciate you. And at first it started to get kind of like, okay, he just says that. But then I realized like, no, he really means that. He's just intentionally coming to tell me because he's lived enough life that he's seen people walk the road I'm walking right now who need to be encouraged. And so I opened my heart to that. Then I got to the place where I would just go find him. Like if I really needed encouragement, I just go find Walt Dill. Be like, hey, Walt, how's it going? Knowing he's going to edify and encourage me. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that because that is so life-giving to me in that place to know that I have the people of God to lean on in those places of weakness, whether it be, like you said, like an addiction or something negative, a sin thing in my life, or whether it just be a hard season. You know, I'm walking with the Lord, but we know that's not always easy. Yeah. You know, I'll say this, when my wife miscarried twins, it was, I would say, probably the hardest season we've walked through in our marriage, just from like an outward perspective, something that happened to us. It was the hardest. And we came to church the next Sunday, and what we experienced on that Sunday was not just our leadership coming around us. Like there's a famous photo somewhere. Oh, it's not famous. We're not famous. There's a locally famous photo somewhere of Steve and Marcy and Andrew and Emily and some of our other close people and the staff coming around and laying hands on us while we were on stage with mics in our hands. And that was very powerful.
I remember that.
And they were prophesying over us, praying over us, lifting us up, encouraging us. But it wasn't just a staff thing. It's not like we did it privately in a back room somewhere. I feel like the Lord, what I felt like the whole church was wrapping us up. And that's what was demonstrated to us as we walked that out, was that we found support, encouragement, and help from people in the entire body. People we didn't even know before that happened. All of a sudden came out and were supporting us, praying for us. People we didn't even know about, were interceding for us at times. And that's what happens in a godly, healthy church community. Is people lift one another up. And you can, like I said with the musicians thing, you can sit on the front row, and we just had lunch, and I said this very thing, so I'm just going to copy it. I'm not going to pretend like it's the first time it came out. But you can sit on the front row, and you can come every single Sunday and still not be connected to the support and community of your church. You can sit right there on the front row and shout amen and give and do all the stuff and not really be a recipient of the encouragement, support, and the community of the local church because you're choosing not to be plugged in some way. And some people, it's like, okay, well, I have a really taxing job. I'm out of town all the time, or I work nights or whatever. There's special scenarios where you have to make special ways for people to get plugged in community. And sometimes it takes us reaching out in a special way to plug those people in. And I know we do that, and I assume most churches do too. But I can count the number of times I've seen that in my, let's just say, the last 10 years on one hand. The vast majority of people that I see complaining about being disconnected, or like they don't feel like they have support, they feel like they're in it alone, might be coming to church, but they're not plugging in. They're not getting involved in a small group. They're not serving on a team somewhere. And if they are, it's once every blue and a moon, and they just come in, kind of do their job and leave. They're not getting together with people of similar seasons, like young families within their church. They're not plugging into what their church offers as far as it comes to community and ways to plug in. But then they'll stand there and be like, I come to church every Sunday, and I feel like we need more connection. Like we need community. Community is the word. And it's like, well, community is just sitting there on a silver platter, just waiting for you to dig in. But it's up to you to plug in.
Yeah. Yeah. We can create spaces. We can create places. We can create opportunities. And then obviously that's where relationship as a two-way street comes in, because that opportunity is an opportunity to be taken. It's a step to be taken. And I think it's beautiful. I think the idea here is it's a leaning in towards each other, right? It's like, here's community in the local body. Here's that person that comes in and you lean towards, but then this person has to lean towards too. And that's what community is. Community, relationship, and we know this because we're married. Relationship doesn't work. It doesn't work when somebody's just completely checked out of the relationship. Mm-hmm. You know, when there's only one side coming to the table, that doesn't work. That's not healthy. It's not the way relationship is meant to be. And so it's the beauty of the together aspect, right? And a husband and wife come together. They continue dating, even in the context of their marriage. They continue pursuing one another. The same is true about relationship and about doing life with other believers. It's hey, what are you doing to step towards? Mm-hmm. What are you doing to step towards? But the thing that can get us in trouble is making assumptions, and beginning to go down the road of, man, if like I'm just going to consistently just wait for somebody to step towards me in relationship. And I'm not talking about like men pursuing women in terms of relationship and marriage. I'm talking about like in the context of friendship. Like if you're not ever moving towards, you're just waiting for somebody to move towards you, I would ask the question, what can you do to move towards? Mm-hmm. What step can you take to move towards?
Yeah.
Because relationship at any level is intentional. It requires intentionality. You're not going to get healthy relationship without intentionality.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. And so that is a crucial element of walking out life in community in a healthy way, and in a way that values the fact that, hey, this is a two-way street. So I know I need to do something. I know you're going to need to do something. And we're going to come together and we're going to value taking that step towards each other. And then that is a healthy outflow for relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and like I had, when you were talking about that, you were talking about like stepping in, and I was like, what do you, like, it's a commitment that you make. Because I heard like they committed themselves, but really in the NASB, it's Acts 2:42 about the early church right after the day of Pentecost. It says they were continually devoting themselves to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, breaking of bread, and to prayer.
Yeah.
And it's like they were continually devoting themselves to that. And I'm like, what if we continually are we continually devoting ourselves to fellowship?
Yeah.
Because I think we go, okay, here, I'm a Christian. I'm going to continually devote myself to coming to church. Cool. I'm going to continually devote myself to reading God's word. Great. The apostles' teaching, they didn't have a Bible. You could say that's kind of the same. But to fellowship and breaking of bread, like, am I continually devoting myself to the relationships outside of just my family unit? Am I continually devoting myself to that? Because that's where the life comes from, right? Like the life that's promised out of that, especially when you read the New Testament letters, in community, it's promised, or it comes out of that place of devoting yourself to the fellowship, to staying together. And so many times you can see the early church fathers coming against and saying like, hey, this thing you're doing is dividing you, and you can't let it divide you. Yeah. Right? Here's an answer. Here's an answer to the problem. But I'm not worried about the problem so much as I'm worried about you being divided. Mm-hmm. Right? The problem was always, this is screwing up your fellowship, and you can't screw up your fellowship. You must stay in unity. It is a core Christian tenet, is this place of unity with brothers and sisters in Christ. That is, I mean, really how we were designed to live, like you said from the beginning. But it's an intentional thing. And I've been in many seasons where I've been like, oh man, I got like one good friend or two good friends, I don't really have any other connection outside of that. And, we all got young families, we're busy or whatever. And I had to wake up one day and say like, oh, this is up to me. It's up to me to make these relationships happen.
Yeah.
And then hopefully there's also buy-in from the other side where I take a step, they take a step, and now we're forming new relationships, and we're broadening this unity in the body, and we're creating community.
Yeah.
You know, it's not something that you just come to on a Sunday, but it's something that you create in your own life. Yeah. And hopefully the church that you're in fosters ways to do that, like our church does, through table groups and men's and women's and singles ministry and whatever else you want to name. But we foster ways not to serve people. We do serve people, and not for people to serve, but for people to create community. It's not up to the table group pastor to make sure everyone is like, to create community for people, like they're a matchmaker, like, hey, you guys fit good together. It's up to people to do that. They come into the group, and then they can choose to sit out, or they can choose to really step in and find that community they're after. So,
yeah, and I just think that's just really important, you know. And I think something I've learned even in pastoring has been, and this is just some advice that I would give to somebody that maybe is like, I don't know where that is. I would say, find a way to take a step. What is that, right? Is it a phone call? Is it a quick text to somebody? Hey, would love to grab coffee with you. You know, the intentionality, like I have people, you know, I can't meet with everybody, and I meet with as many people as I can as a pastor. I love meeting with people. It's actually one of my favorite parts of pastoring is meeting with people. I love spending time with people. Obviously, I don't have time to spend individual time with everybody, but I do my best with my schedule. And I've been so blessed in this season by the people that have been like, hey, I want to get coffee with you. And then we've gone to coffee, you know, just getting to meet with some of these guys, some of these men, and just get to sit down and have coffee. But oftentimes they've been like making that step. And I want to do my best as a pastor to meet that person in that place. Hey, you stepped out. You said, hey, could we grab coffee? And even though my schedule is crazy, and it could be a little ways out, I want to be intentional to make time for that and value the intentionality and the step of faith that it took to approach somebody to say, hey, can we go sit down?
Yep.
Can we fellowship together? And in this season, I've had some amazing, rewarding conversations with people because of that. And even I'm thinking about my conversations with other pastors and other leaders. You know, it'd be great if that just happened. It'd be great sometimes if things just happened.
Yep.
I'm reminded of that verse that says, you know, you have not because you ask not. And obviously, like, there's an element of things just come, but there's also an element of intentionality and faith that comes when you ask, when you pursue, when you go after that thing. And I have found the relationships that I'm even stewarding as a pastor with other pastors, a lot of that is because I am, hey, can we get together? Hey, can we get together? Hey, can we get together?
Yep.
Because I value needing that.
Yeah.
So if I value needing that, I'm going to do whatever I can to reach out. And I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be a step towards, because of course there does.
Yeah.
But I think it's important. I would just say, if you're in that place and you're like, man, I don't know what community looks like. I don't know, I would say, what's a step that you can take? And just take a step.
Yeah.
Do something to move towards with intentionality. And I think that's going to get honored. And I think you're going to find that when you take that step, somebody's going to meet that step. And all of a sudden there's going to be a relationship. But don't just be like, hey, it's not happening. It's not going to happen. Nobody, I know there can, because then you can get the thoughts that start to seep in. Nobody likes me. Nobody values relationship. Nobody cares, and the reality is that's not true. It's a lie. It's a lie from the enemy. People like make a step And actually you'll find, hey, yeah, we can do that. We can go to coffee. Yeah, come join our small group. Yeah, come to youth group. Come to this, come to that. And there's that invitation and that step. But don't allow the enemy to get you isolated and then begin to continuously sow lies into your mind about how you're not valuable, when in reality you're incredibly valuable. One, because God says you're valuable. But two, I know there's people that will see the value that God has put within you, and they'll begin to bring that out, and it will accelerate things in your life. I love this quote by Michael Miller. He says, sometimes vision comes in the form of a person. And I love that. Obviously, of course, the person of Jesus, right? Like vision, of course, without vision, the people perish. Like we need vision, but sometimes it comes in the form of a relationship. How many times have my business, the things in my life come from a relationship that I had? Yeah. Almost all of them. It's crazy to even think about that. And so I just think, from the standpoint of the kingdom flows through relationship. It flows through relationship with God, and it flows through relationship with others. And I think we have to have the both. Yeah. It's just critically important.
Yeah, it really is. And so Paige and I, when we were married, we didn't have kids yet. We weren't church hoppers because we worked there. But we moved quite frequently, and there were two things that really changed, I think, the course of our lives. I don't think it's overstated to say it changed the course of our lives. Two things we had happen, and it was both in people that we sought counsel from. And one was, I think I did the math. We were a part of 7 churches in 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, not all individually, like some of them we were like attending this church and serving here, but also helping serve over here. But we were involved in 7 different churches over 7 years.
Wow.
We met at a church, and then we came to Convergence, and then when we went over here, and then we came back to Convergence, and then we went here and here while serving over here. Then we went to Florida, and then we came back to Convergence. And I can remember sitting in my car talking to my wife. Ember was born at this point. Our first daughter had been born in 2017. We were in Florida in 2018 into 2019. It was toward the end of 2018, and we were just kind of at the end of our rope. And I remember sitting in my car with Paige, and Ember was asleep in the apartment, but we were trying to get outside so that we could talk. So we had like the baby monitor, and we were on the phone with Tom and Wendy Dermott. And we were telling them like, oh my gosh, our life sucks. Like, this is terrible. Like, tell us to come home. Like, it's basically what we wanted them to say. Tell us it's okay for us to come home. And it was okay for us to come home. That is what we ended up doing. But what Wendy said was so wise. She basically was like, hey, it's not possible that you guys hit this many church bodies in our area and abroad, and you didn't find one that was good enough to stay at.
Right. That's right.
It's not the words she used. I don't remember the words she used, but that was general. Yeah. That was basically what she said.
Right.
It was like
that's not the problem.
Hey, I think you guys need to start looking inward.
Yes.
And if it hadn't been from a mother in the faith that I trusted so much,
that's really good.
I would have been just so offended really and just wrote it off. I could have been like, "What? Me?" But because it was from Wendy, I was like, "Holy crap! I know she's right. I've never seen her wrong. Like, it's got to be right." And I was like, dang it. So, we obviously took that to heart. And then we did end up going. We did end up coming back to Texas, to Fort Worth. We came and we started serving here at Convergence, not attending, but we were in need of a worship pastor here at the time. And so Paige and I helped. We got into a rotation, and we're like helping lead worship in the interim, but not on staff or anything yet. And we were actually interviewing at other churches. And I know this is a long story, but we came in for like an interview type thing at a church we had previously served at that we had left, but it was a paying worship pastor gig, and that's what we needed. So we were like, cool, let's interview. And even against our better judgment, like we kind of knew in our heart, like that's probably not for us, but it's something, and it wasn't Convergence because we didn't want to come back to Convergence. We didn't feel like we were supposed to. And we sat down, we drove up to their church, met with them with Ember in tow with our little 1-year-old. and sat down with them, toured their new facility, sat down in the conference room and talked, and immediately it became apparent to both parties, this is not working out. Like, this is not good for you guys, is it? And we were like, no, probably not. Like, we just were honest.
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, we feel the same way. But we began discussing and talking about this season and kind of confiding in them what we were feeling. And they were like, you really need to plant.
Yes.
Like, I know you think you've planted, but you haven't planted. Like, you've just kind of went a couple places. Like, you went a bunch of places and you did a bunch of amazing things. Yeah. And there was tons of fruit from the Lord, but you did not plant. You had great friends, but you did not plant. Yep. You need to plant.
Yeah.
And they gave us some advice on where to plant, which is the topic of a different podcast. But the bottom line is we were like, okay, we really have to plant now. Yeah. So we came to Convergence and we made a commitment. Yeah. We committed ourselves to fellowship.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think just to put it completely bluntly, you're not going to grow if you're not planted.
Yeah. Well, and the fruit of that in our lives was we were like, oh my gosh, look at Convergence. We planted at the right place. Look how amazing this community is. And it is. The community is amazing. We are awesome. I'll tell anybody that. Like, I'm not one of those people that only recommends my other church. I always try to recommend other churches when people are asking as well. But like, we're the best. Like, we're the best church in the Metroplex. Sorry, other churches. We're awesome.
A great church.
But the point I'm trying to make is,
all other churches
I was like, wow, Convergence is so amazing. I never realized this. Look at what God is doing here in this building that we get to be a part of. Again, true. But what I didn't realize until quite a few years after that was that how much of that was actually just my decision to plant. That I was finally tapped into the community and the support that we talked about, that I had been someone sitting on the front row and sliding out the back out of the green room for so many years, and I didn't feel that. And now I finally decided to commit and to plant, and I felt that. And it wasn't so much about that Convergence was the right place, but it was that I decided to commit. I decided to commit myself to it.
You put your seed in the ground.
Actually plug in. And it was, I owed that as a father. I owed that to my children. And I'll say this to anybody who's listening, who's like a young family, who has like little kids, because maybe it is the subject of another podcast. But the advice that man gave me, that pastor, was pick a church for your children. Don't pick a church for you because you like the music or it's trendy or it's fun or they do really cool men's retreats. I don't know that anyone's ever picked a church for that, but like no other reason. Pick a church where your children are going to thrive. And when we thought about that, the only place that we could think of was Convergence. And that's why we came here. It wasn't because we thought, oh, good, there's a worship pastor job. It wasn't because we loved the preaching or the worship or anything else. It was because we thought our children would thrive here, and they have. And so with that in mind, we planted. And we said, this is where we're going to stay. And we have now reaped the benefits of planting in good soil. Now, obviously, don't plant in bad soil.
Yeah.
If your church is toxic, don't plant there.
Yeah.
Go find another church.
You need to find a healthy place.
But that's the subject of another podcast. Yeah. What I'm trying to say here is that do it for your family. Do it for your family. Do it for yourself. Plant and plug in to that community, because if we had been elsewhere when we would have gone through like the miscarriage or any of the other things we went through in the last 5 years has been insane. I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah. No, I would echo the exact same thing. There's no way that we could have gone through the difficulties that we've walked through, the 4 babies that we've lost, and the deep level of wrestling and what is going on, and help us, Jesus. And we need people, like the people that were around us were a huge part of us walking through that on the other side. And I know there are so many people that's their story too. You know, it's like, I don't know that I would have gotten through that if it wasn't for, of course, the Lord, but also the Lord speaking and the Lord bringing encouragement through these people, and the Lord putting people around me that help bring me forward when I need to be brought forward. Like, not just lightly encouraged, but like we're dragging Andrew along with us.
Yeah.
You know, you need community that's willing to be like, there ain't no way you're staying in the back seat. Like, come on, we're going. we're going. You need community that's willing to say, hey, that decision you made, let's talk about that. You know, you need community that challenges you, that encourages you, that lifts you up, but also that strengthens you, and that's able to, you're able to link arms and know that there's an iron sharpen iron. There's an aspect of, man, I know that person when I'm with them, when I get lunch with them, there's an element of like, they're bringing me forward, I'm bringing them forward, and together we're going forward. And there's a healthy community relationship. I love in that passage, even just in the book of Acts, it says that they were meeting the needs of each other to the point that they had no needs, which is wild to think about.
Yeah.
But the reality was they were so communal that the needs were brought. They were laid at the apostles' feet. People would bring their property and they would be like, look, here's property. Give this to whoever needs the property. Like just wild things. And I think all of us can use an upgrade, even just reading those verses about what that looks like. But the reality of the communal living to such a high degree that you knew the needs of your neighbor and you did whatever was necessary to meet that need.
Yeah.
I think that that's a huge deal. And that's something that I think the Lord wants to bring us back to, is what does that level of community look like? Where it's not just that we're around each other in a setting, but I can be around you and not know anything about you. I can know around you and not have a clue what your story is, what your needs are, what you're going through, what you're walking through, but a community that actually digs deep. We plant, we're together. We know what you're walking through. We reach out when we're struggling, and we walk together to a degree that our needs are being met in the context of community. And I just think that's so powerful that a community could live with such degree of intentionality, like the book of Acts, where it actually was that the needs of the entire community were being met. That's wild.
Yeah.
Even just to think about, right? Just to think about it in our own context. But yeah. I just think that's where community really, like a thriving, healthy community meets the needs of each other. We help each other. We help each other when we're stuck. We help each other when we're weak. We help each other when things are going on. And of course, ultimately, we're all pursuing the Lord together. And so we're all getting that. But I really think that there's intimacy with the Lord that's personal. But I don't think intimacy with the Lord is meant to just be personal. I think it's meant to be lived in community.
Amen.
I think that's a huge key to the whole thing. I love even Jesus would go spend time with the Father, but then he'd come and he'd then disciple the disciples in that. That's it to me. It's not just that it's just for me by myself in my own thing, but actually it's that there's a part of that that's to be lived out and expressed within community. And so I just think there's an aspect of it that it has, like, it is communal in so many ways.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. And I want that. I want that for anyone listening to this podcast. I really want, or watching. I want that full expression of a life lived in community and all the benefits that come with that. It's so much better than being isolated or being, stuck on an island alone in your faith. We just weren't meant to live that way. So I just bless whoever might be listening right now or watching, who really, whatever you need, whether you need a new community or you need to plug in the community that you're already in, that the Lord would just come and meet you there, give you wisdom,
thank you, Lord.
And guide you into the place of true community, where you can plug in and just live that life-giving life that we were meant to walk. In Jesus' name.
Yes.